Welcome to the podcast with your favorite cash flow guys, Mike and Blaine, giving you the best advice while having a beer. When you're running a business, there are problems every day. Let Mike and Blaine help you out and guide your way. Cheers to the good times with Mike and Blaine for business, beer, and BS.
Hey, it's Mike and Blaine. This is episode 144. I'm Mike Blaine, also known as Cash Flow Mike. That is my friend and my partner, the CEO of Dry Run, Blaine Birch. What's up, my man?
Ready to get going, man. I'm excited. It feels like it's been a while because actually we actually skipped a week, which doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while we got to skip one. So it's been a little while. I'm kind of excited to get back up and running here.
Yeah, I kind of missed it, right? And it's totally my fault. So, I mean, I'm thinking about 80% of the time it's my fault, right? Because like I was in New York, I'm in a conference, I'm on a plane, I don't know.
Yeah, and I just sit on my ass in my basement. So I'm always good to go.
No, because there's been times when you actually were on the road, you're running up the California coastline, right? And you still stop and do a podcast.
We found a way. You even did one from Mexico. So, sometimes we can fight through it, but no, it's good. It's good to be back. It's fun to be back and ready to rock and roll here.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. So we're going to talk about life cycle stages today. What the typical kind of business kind of goes through. Everybody kind of knows the chart. It's like, from startup to growth to maturity to decline. But because of that, I want to talk about us, right? What's happening with us? We were startup. I mean, I know we're in season 4. It still feels like a startup, but we've seen some growth. We're not into the huge growth thing yet. I still consider it a startup because we didn't have that hockey stick growth. But there is movement in our podcast listeners and our sponsors, right? Even our sponsorship is growing. This year is our best year yet.
Yeah, which is really cool because we got a new beer sponsor that I'll let you announce her today, but because you know her, but new beer sponsor this week, we're up to like 5. So that's super exciting. We love having all of our beer sponsors is really exciting for us.
Well, what's interesting is that 2 of our sponsors now, and by the way, Larry Weinstein, I'll let you talk about him, but he asked me, he goes, do you guys need more money? He's like, do you guys need more money? I'll throw more money at you. Yeah, the answer is always yes. Yeah,
always yes. Yeah.
But 2 of them, Larry and the new one, Jackie York. And I want to talk a little bit about her because you haven't heard her name yet, but Jackie York does advisory, CFO advisory type services and accounting services, lives in Hawaii, but man, she just got certified in my program as a Clear Path to Cash professional. So is Larry, but she has been all over the last 3 or 4 months. I mean, she's been to Japan. She's been to, she lives in Hawaii. She's been to San Antonio to a live event that I hosted here. She is just always on the move, and she has a whole host of services, including one that I think is really interesting. She also does cannabis accounting, and I didn't realize this. There's a whole nother process that you have to do on top of regular accounting when you do cannabis accounting.
It's a tricky one. One of our partners at Dry Run actually does some accounting for some in cannabis industry, and it is tricky. It is hard. It's a lot more challenges, I think, than a lot of other verticals. So that's how Jackie is dialed in because it's a tough area. And so she's a pro, all pro.
So if you're looking for somebody that does CFO advisory services or accounting services, bloomingcfo.com. That's her website. Go check her out. And of course, I'll go ahead and finish up with Larry. Larry Weinstein, man, I talk to this guy probably every day, right? He's become not just a client, not just he's a friend, right? He's an absolute friend, not just a sponsor, is what I was trying to say. But I talk to him. He gives me advice. He looks at my stuff. He helps me out on what marketing messages and marketing techniques I should be using. So he is the type of guy you want on your team. Larry Weinstein, the best CPA in Houston, but he does nationwide. So if you're looking for a CPA, go check out Larry.
Yeah. Thanks again, Larry. We got 3 more. We got a ways to go here. So we're going to jump in here. So Baltimore Mike, the other Mike Milan, who has sent beer across the country for us, hand delivered to me. Thanks again, Mike. I'm threw some. I drank that beer fast, so it's kind of gone, but it was awesome. So did not take much time on that. So thanks again, Mike, and neighbor Pat, as always, walking down and feeding you beer. So that's another big one.
I am having a neighbor Pat beer today. It is an Irish Red. Look at that. His logos and labels keep getting better, right? This is a look, brewed in San Antonio. Neighbor Pat. He even put neighbor Pat on the logo right there. Irish Red. So man, I'll tell you what.
I love that
today. I guess it kind of got a little smudging. That's not a logo. That says neighbor Pat on it. But how cool is that?
Nice.
That he's leaned into it, right? He's really leaned.
I love that. That was a great way to do it, Pat. That's a great way to name it. I love it. And Rachel Barnett with Gentle Frog. I'll let you talk about Rachel. She's just amazing.
Rachel is the QuickBooks queen. I'm just going to call her that now from now on. QuickBooks queen. If you need to know QuickBooks, you want somebody to help you with QuickBooks, anything answered about QuickBooks, Gentle Frog, Rachel Barnett. She's one of our sponsors. She's one that just pays a year in advance. She goes, yep. And I don't even think she cares if we talk about her, but she just likes to show that much, and we want to appreciate her and make sure she's recognized. But if you know QuickBooks or need QuickBooks, go talk to Rachel.
Yeah, thank you again, Rachel. That's amazing. So 5 beer sponsors. That's so exciting. And before we talk about our beer, while I talk about my beer, I'm going to do a little producer Blaine thing here. Can you double check your mic? Because I'm not sure it's coming through the one you're talking into. And I'll start talking about my beer while you're checking. So I usually have a beer that's related to our topic. And today, not really. I wanted to have this one, and I grabbed it. It's Annex Ale Project out of Calgary, Screaming Meemies, big IPA. And if you know Edmonton, Calgary, there's obviously like a huge rivalry, especially when it comes to sports, but not with beer. With beer, they have a great bunch of small breweries down there, great brewery district. And, I actually had one of Annex's other beers last weekend in a bar here in Edmonton. And I just went, oh yeah, it's been a while since I had one from these guys. And I really love their beer. So I had to grab this one. Screaming Meemies, big IPA, really nice beer. Little heavy, 8.5, but nothing I think I can't handle. So shouldn't be stumbling along too much. What are you drinking today?
I am drinking the Irish Red from neighbor Pat.
Oh,
he brought
Sorry,
me an entire growler of, right. I mean, that's what happens. We get off of one topic and
Yes, we're actually like into the actual topic where we've talked our way through our sponsors and our beer. Now we actually have to start talking business.
Yeah. So we
right.
did. Yeah, that's right. We did just all the routine stuff. But here it is. I want to recapture what it is I wanted to do, because I started with a conversation of the week. You know how these topics, if you've never heard Mike and Blaine before, we picked the topic about 10 minutes before the show. Right. And I used to think it's because I was lazy. Now I just kind of like it. It's like my brain fires faster when I'm like going, I don't know what I'm talking about. And, I guess I'm better with deadlines. But here's the thing. I had some, especially in 2 weeks, I'm going over to the university. I got invited to come be part of their accelerator program where I'm going to teach 2 4-hour sections on sales and 2 on finance. Right. So 2 in July, 2 in June, 2 in July. But it got me thinking about the life cycles of businesses and how they progress, where it goes from the startup phase through what they call a growth phase to maturity, when you kind of just are running on all cylinders, and then this decline, what kind of happens naturally over time when you get kind of bored with your business. Right. So, yeah. But somebody asked me today, I was in a webinar today, and they asked me about the life cycles, and I don't use that terminology. I don't use the terminology startup, growth, maturity, and decline. I use the terminology wonder, blunder, thunder, and under, right? A couple of different reasons, right? Because it's funny. It's funny to say wonder, blunder, thunder, and under, but it's also points out one of the most critical points in any business's life cycle. It's that growth phase. And that's why I renamed it to the blunder phase. But what I want to do is just talk about what it feels like in each phase, and maybe some things to watch out for. And what happens? How do you know you're in that phase or not? So, what's your experience with life cycles? I don't know.
Yeah.
We've never talked about it.
We've never talked about. I'm going to show. I'm going to do like an illustration. Okay, so here is what the books will tell you. It's you start up, and then there's that little crosshatch. It looks like a pond, and then you're climbing up a hill, and they call that the pit of despair as a startup. So, and there's other terms for it, but one of the ones is kind of pit of despair, and it sounds super smooth, but it's that part where it's like, okay, you're trying to get traction, trying to get product market fit, and then you get product market fit and it just goes. But so I drew so that was in a black pen. So if you're watching the show, what I did now is I'm going to draw a little bit closer to reality in a red pen. So Mike, is this closer to what happens in a business?
That looks like my daily schedule.
Yeah, it's like you dumped red spaghetti on a plate. That is what it's like for almost every business. It's it's the books and the advisors and the pros and everything. So, well, this is how it works, and this is what happens, and this is the truth. Is with startup businesses overall, 50% will be gone within their first 3 years? I think 5 years. If you're a tech startup, 90% will be gone. So it's a hard slog, but it is never a straight line. It is up, down, stop, full stop, pivot, trip, fall, burn, try and survive, climb up, get punched in the face, get a big win. And that's the reality, right? So startup, it's so much messier than I think, honestly, sometimes just even people's memory will tell them it was.
Well, it's funny. You said 5 out of 10, 9 out of 10. That number changes every time I talk to somebody, right? If you talk to a banker, they're going to say 8 out of 10 fail, right? So just right in that first 5 years. If you talk to a business owner, they'll say 7 out of 10 or 6 out of 10, right? They think they're a little bit more. What's interesting about that number, though, is that it drops dramatically if you buy a franchise, right? That number drops to 2 out of 10, right? 2 out of 10 fail of a franchise. If you buy a McDonald's, less than 1 out of 10 of those fail. The big reason, it's the process, right? It's just a franchise has a proven system, a process, things that you do. It's all the stuff you have to learn in the startup of your own company is already in place. How do you hire? How do you work?
It is that. It's also literally the brand. And boy, that makes a big difference because you can have, like, we've struggled with that at times. It's like you can have product market fit. You can have one hell of a killer product. We have people come in all the time. Oh my God, I've been looking for you for years. But it's hard to cut through the thicket of noise out there and be known, like for people to know about you and really truly understand, your unique selling proposition. Like, what do you do this different? What do you do this better? It's hard. It's hard to cut through that. And with a franchise, a lot of times what they bring is that, hey, there is some penetration in the market. People are kind of familiar with it. They already trust it to some degree. That's a big benefit. That's a big help.
Yeah. I look at this startup thing as you are at school, right? You are in class, in school every day. If you're not buying a franchise, even then you're learning their systems, and you do get a jump start on the brand and on the marketing. In your own company, you're at school. You got to figure it out. What's your message? What's your value proposition? Why should people buy from you? I always find that interesting. The other thing I learned is like cash flow management. You also got to become a student of the IRS. Right? Like how do I even pay my tax? What taxes do I have to pay? That in and of itself, that's why there's so many people that need advisors to get up and running and started, just to make sure that you don't miss a critical hurdle, like electing to be an S corp if you're an LLC and you want to pay yourself a salary instead of a distribution. Well, you have to. There's like 2 different pieces of paper you got to file to be able to do that. You can't just pay yourself a paycheck. You got to declare that you're now an S corp so you can withhold taxes from you and submit it to the government. It's the craziest thing in the world, but you miss that piece of paper, you can't do it.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you a question here. So between the two of us, how many franchises have we owned?
Zero.
So that statistically, you probably have a better chance with a franchise. But I also know, as an entrepreneur, and you're the same way, it's like, yeah, but I got my own dream. I want to build my own thing. And I never even considered it because I was just, this is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. This is what I was born to do. And so, truthfully, yeah, like statistically, you have a better chance of survival. Yet, I think honestly, most of us just kind of go, I'm doing my own thing. Like you just, and what, for better or for worse, right?
I was told early on, either you're going to work on your dream or somebody else's. That's your only two choices, right? And yeah, I bet on me, and mainly because I wanted, and this is the, I don't know, the ego side of me. If I made it, I wanted the recognition. Right?
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it for the money. I want to say, holy shit, he did something great. He built this company. He had this idea, built those product, whatever that is, or trained 50,000 people and they went out and made $1 billion. I wanted the recognition for being the creator of something. I didn't want the recognition of being the operator of something else.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even know for me if it had much to do with recognition. I don't think I care enough about what other people think. For me, I want to create something that I believe in, that I can look at and sit back and go, I built that, and at least in a small way, I changed the world.
Come on, you can believe in it. Yeah, you can believe in a pizza too, and just have a Pizza Hut franchise.
Well, I would not say that Pizza Hut is changing the world as much as, but a little independent pizza shop with little Italian bake oven. I'm going to plug Rosso Pizzeria in Edmonton. If you're in Edmonton, you got to go to Rosso. See Dave and the crew there. Yeah. So pizza is changing the world when it's really good. It'll change the world.
Hey, speaking of, all right, I gloated last year when the Knights won. Congrats, man. You got a chance here. The Oilers.
Yeah, they haven't won a thing. I will. We're in hockey country here, man, and after the several decades of hell we've been through, I will say that I think it's the same for the team and for the fans. It's Stanley Cup or bust. I don't think anyone's going to be all that. We'll be proud of the guys. I'm proud of the guys for doing it. It's not a win unless they're raising the Stanley Cup above their head, and it's going to be freaking hard because Florida is one hell of a tough team. So, good on them to get this far, but I know the city is ready for a parade. So we'll see what happens.
There you go. All right, so back to the startup. If we're going to say that 8 out of 10 fail, that means 2 out of 10 make it, right? So, and what's funny about when you make it, not only do you start to see it in revenue, cash, whatever, it starts to just this hockey stick thing, just like you showed in your beautiful illustration there. but here's the thing. I tell people all the time, this is the difference between push and pull. In the beginning, when you're a startup, you're pushing your message to anybody that will hear it. Hey, buy my stuff. Look at my product. Buy my service. Let me help you with this. You're just blasting it out there, pushing it. There's a point in time when not only do you see it on paper like you just showed, you feel it, where the market starts to pull your stuff from you. You're like, oh my God, we're getting more clicks. We're getting more calls. People are doing more signups. There's something that happened in the market where now it's being pulled more than it's being pushed. And it's a cool ass feeling when people call you up that you're like, hey, how'd you hear about us? And you have to legitimately ask them how you heard about them. And it was nothing that you were doing that came from a way totally opposite direction, a referral or who knows.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's a good feeling and it's a different feeling. And we actually I had a call earlier this week and it was just one of those ones that was beautiful because it's like, another CFO I know recommended you guys. And, when I was talking with them, it was kind of like, holy shit, you do what? Like, yeah. Awesome. Like No one else can do this. You can't do that, can you? I'm like, no, it's right in our wheelhouse. And it was such a cool feeling. But if the way you're talking, it's almost like it sounds like it's overnight. It's not. It actually takes a while to see and to recognize. Even going back to my agency days, I don't even know if we recognize that at one, like this is like when the pull starts happening, there was a point where it was like, I remember we're on the phone, we're networking, we're trying to get jobs. We're like, oh, this is the wrong group. And are we charging enough? And like all of this kind of stuff. And then there was at some point where I'm like, we're winning almost every bid. So it's a different metric, right? Are we charging enough? At that point, it was a little bit different a view of it. And you go, I don't think we should be winning all these. Like, are we charging enough? Are we undercharging? Looking back now, what I realize is it had nothing to do with what we were charging. It had everything to do with we could do stuff that no one else could do. We had a combo of pro quality, like we could do broadcast quality video, broadcast quality animation, and we had the best designers in the city. We had developers. We could do these interactive things at a level of quality that I don't think anyone else could do. And we could do it all under our own roof. We just didn't know that was important. And that was a thing. We didn't know why there was this pull. And we just kind of thought, maybe we're not charging enough. And you know what? Truthfully, probably weren't. But we didn't really recognize it. It kind of snuck up on us. And I think if we had recognized it more, we would have been able to take advantage of it more and double down more and understand it better. And it's kind of like hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah, I can say that. I probably alluded that it just happens instantly. It doesn't, right? I've told you the story about at Finnegraph when we felt the pull, right? And it was months after the action happened, but we felt the pull. Did I tell you about Treehouse Masters?
Yes. In fact, we have a short we've had thousands of views on, like 7,000 or 8,000, something like that, of views on this one short on Treehouse. Yeah.
All right. So the thing is that for years I was trying to get everybody's attention. I don't care if it's PayPal or Experian or whoever. This show hits the air, and it has nothing to do with our company except for the fact that he said he was a fintech startup and had the name of the company on his jacket and shirt. That was it.
Yeah.
And out of the blue, the guy I was trying to reach calls me from PayPal, and we get a pilot and all that started, right? And then from there, Experian and Jack Henry, the Baker, all these other companies wanted to talk to us about what we were doing. It was such a weird feeling when you struggled and made your 13 to 15 touches with no response from the other side. You guys have been there where you try to sell, then all of a sudden they call you.
Yeah.
What? How does that work?
Yeah. And it circles all the way back to a little bit what I was talking about is do people know about you? Like it's in a nutshell, it's like you can have the best product, the best service, the best team, filling a gap, have this really unique approach. And if people don't know about you, you're going to be struggling. But it's not easy to get the right message to the right people at the right time. You can spend, like we've talked about it before, you and I have both, between us, have flushed hundreds of thousands of dollars down the toilet trying to get people's attention in the completely wrong way. Like just how it is.
Yeah, because we don't know what we don't know. And this SEO thing you're doing right now is a classic example. It's a minor task, but man, and it's mundane, and it's like going, you just have to do it. But man, it pays so much dividends. I'm waiting to see what happens. I improve my page score, SEO analytics from ridiculously low, right? We're talking a page score of, I don't know, 50 or 60. I'm at 94 now, which I assume will translate to more search results and more clicks. I assume traffic will now pop up, but I'm like you. I've spent a ridiculous amount of time now trying to figure out, how do I tell a consistent story where in the needle or the haystack of the internet, I'm the needle you finally find. Right?
Yeah.
And you find me easier because I'm a bigger needle now.
Yeah. It's really tough. Like we're constantly looking at, and honestly, we're not doing as good a job as we should. We've improved it remarkably, like a lot in the last 6 months, but I think we had
Hey, you know what's funny?
let
'Cause
it,
I can
let
test
her,
your score on this. I use all-in-one SEO, and I can analyze your site right now.
yeah, I don't want to hear what it is because it's probably not good enough. Because
What?
I'll be honest with you, we let it atrophy over a number of years, and we've been working. We did it wrong. We had to just we were doing the wrong things, and we started to got an expert to help us, and we started to circle the tanker back, right? And it's been hard, but we're starting to see those results now, which is really good.
Cool. It's analyzing.
Analyzing.
Oh,
You
you're
got a
not good.
3.
You got a very, very good score here. Look, I'll send it to you or whatever. But you got a 72 out of 100, and that's very good. Anything over a 70 is good.
Oh, okay.
It's saying you.
Well,
It's
that's
saying,
good.
yeah, but look at this. You want to know some of the stuff that you can improve? One is some of the images. Yeah, some of the images don't
Send it
have
over,
an
yeah.
alt attribute. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'll be honest with you. I've got that. I've heard that one before, and I'm like, just another thing I got to do. But I do have to do that. But I'm curious. Like you're up in the 90s. That is amazing. Send me that score because I am that little report and where it's from because we're going to look into that. But I will tell you, we were not scoring very good. We've done a lot of work on it recently, and the score's coming up. But most importantly, we're starting to show up in the right searches a little bit more than we were before. We showed up in a ton of searches. It just we realized it was kind of the wrong ones, and it's tough. It's really hard because it's competitive out there, and SEO really matters, right? And it's been a real challenge, but we are making some headway. So.
Well, I'm hoping. I added this thing. It's called all-in-one SEO, right? AIO SEO, right? Is the product, and of course, it's got an annual subscription or something like that. But I just kind of do what they tell me. I know you got a product like that tells you what to do, but ever since, and I just do a little bit every day. I'm going to spend like 15 minutes and do something. And I started doing that, and that score started to pop up. So now I'm waiting to see what happens on the other side because I just started doing it in the last couple of weeks, and I moved my score, I don't know, I'm going to say 40 points in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'll take a little bit of time because we've been spending a lot of time generating content, and that's really helped. But that's the heavy lifting stuff. I think probably the things that are holding us back on that score is it feels like a little bit of the grunt work stuff that we've been a little bit lackadaisical on. So no, I appreciate sending that over because I'm gonna work my way through it and because that stuff matters. It matters a lot, right? So
yeah. So all right. We're talking about what I call the blunder phase, right, which is the growth phase. And there's two things that I see kill these type of companies or this stage of company, and I'm always aware of it on my side because I've committed both of these fouls. Right? So, remember, history is your best teacher. Well,
I have two, and I don't even know what they are yet. I can guarantee you.
All right, so the first thing that can kill a company while it's growing, right? You're saying, "Oh man, we're going to make it, right? We're doing it," and you think you're being successful. The first thing is exactly what you and I do: cash flow. We're talking about growing broke, where you actually are so successful that you outrun your own financial capability. You can't keep up with it, right? Yep. And I always use the story of the perfect push-up where he had all these orders and he was putting together all the salaries, the products and all that type of stuff. He had month after month after month of expense and didn't get paid for 3-4 months later, right? So all of that is money out of his own pocket. So you can be so successful on paper. You're like going, dude, we made like $2 million. Well, how come I don't have any? Because it's not in your pocket yet. So growing broke is the first one. And if you got my hotel staffing company was the same way. It was payroll after payroll after payroll after payroll before Marriott made their first payment. Yeah. So what about you? You had a problem like that?
Oh yeah. Like, and I've told this story, but I'll go into a little more in depth in it. Like 2008, with my creative agency, when the world started shutting down, the very first thing that hit you right in the face was cash flow. How the hell are we going to make payroll, right? Like, and it was a lot of dancing around and a hell of a lot of spreadsheets to make sure we knew exactly where to go and what to do. But what I think, and I want to sort of make sure I really emphasize what I think was the difference maker for us. When you talk about cash flow, it's really easy to think near term. We looked at the cash flow problem we had, and then we looked upstream to the revenue problem we had and what was happening when these deals were budgets were slamming shut, and we went straight into strategy. So there's this near-term cash flow, but if we just kept trying to nurture that near-term cash flow, we would have ran out of cash. What we started to do is figure out there's this near-term, how do we survive long enough, make sure we're paying all the staff and keep going? But we got a bigger problem here. How do we pivot to make sure that we've got the right clientele that are going to drive business when our main clients, especially government clients, were slamming those budgets absolutely shut for years? And so it was a combination of short-term cash flow, long-term strategy that worked, that got us out of the hole and got us growing really quickly. But it was cash flow was the one that was like the canary in the coal mine, that is like, oh man, we got to change. We got to change now. And pivots like that are scary, but that's what got us to success, right?
Yeah, really interesting, right? Because that's how the perfect push-up happened. He had this other product, the Body Rev, wasn't selling. He was burning through cash. Sales were never going to catch up. He was just pouring money into marketing. He says, I'm going to pivot. And pivot is, I kind of still believe in something, but I got to reintroduce it a different way, and I've done that a couple of times with Cashflow Mike. Speaking of Cashflow Mike and some of the stuff that we do over here. Is that good? That was really good, right?
I love it.
No, yeah, but by the way, I do have a coaching program. We're talking about things like the financial gap. That's what we're talking about right now with cash flow, managing the financial gap, managing your cash conversion cycle, which I call the fast money formula. These type of things matter. And it isn't that, a lot of people don't know it. They feel it. They seal it. They don't know how to take care of it. And what I do is I teach business owners, accountants, bookkeepers, fractional CFOs. It doesn't matter. I teach you simple techniques that you can put to action today in your business. I just got off a webinar. I taught 3 techniques. There's people already using my stuff tonight in their own businesses to find hidden cash and improve their cash conversion cycle. So go visit me at cashflowmike.com, and get the free ebook. If you want to learn how to look at financial statements or look at your business through the eyes of the financial statements, download my book, The 7-Minute Conversation, How to Analyze Any Company's Financial Statements in 7 minutes or less. Appreciate you. That's my mid-roll, sponsorship. What do you think?
Beautiful. I love it. And I believe in it. I absolutely believe in it, because it's all the stuff we're talking about now. Talking about a pivot doesn't happen without making sure you have the cash on hand that you can do this. And we've been through this. You and I both been through this stuff, right? And the reason that we survived, it wasn't there, it wasn't luck. There's probably a little bit of luck mixed in. It was truly understanding where you're headed, and mixing in short-term tactical with long-term strategy, and making sure you got the right mix and understanding it. And the cash flow is the root of it. That's the baseline of it.
Yeah. All right. So that was the one problem, right? Growing broke. You can be so successful that you run out of cash. That's a weird thing to say, but people think a cash flow problems is, I just don't have any cash because I have a terrible business. No, you can be successful and not have any cash. Yep. The second one I call a sideshow venture. Right. And this is one you don't really think about as much, but it happened to me. And here's kind of how it happens. When you start to have success, right, your company starts to grow, people around you see it. They're like going, oh man, he's really rolling in. His company's really moving, jiving. I see him everywhere. He's doing great things. He bought a new car. He's got a new house. They're going to see it somehow that you're having a level of success that they didn't see in you before. When that happens, they're going to approach you with a different mentality. They're going to say, hey, listen, you're doing really good in your business. Have you ever thought about doing this, right? You're good at this, you should do that. Or we should partner together on a thing. It's like they think you have the Midas touch, so they want a part of it, right? They want a part of that success somehow. And so that's what happened to me. I had a hotel staffing company, 3-bar restaurants, and property management, right? Just apartments and stuff like that. And my friend had invented Recover, a late night like hangover pill. And I'm like going, well, I can do this other stuff. I can do that too. Well, that is a sideshow venture. All the stuff I had was service based, which means I just used people to clean hotel rooms, to clean my apartments, to provide a service of providing apartments, to providing food and drink, right? Most everything I did was a service type business. I wasn't in retail. I wasn't in, wholesale, trying to sell to retail environments. I was way out of my element. And what happens when you get that far off of your element? It's called a sideshow venture because it's not in your lane. And what happens is while you're trying to figure it out, while you're going through the learning process that you just did in the startup phase of your own company, you're going to do the startup phase again in a different company, in a different industry, but you're going to use the money from your successful company to fund the teaching on the other one, right? And in some cases, you're going to create another problem in your first successful company while you're trying to maintain the loser, right? The one that you struggle with.
Yeah, yeah. It comes down to there's sort of I think probably an arrogance with entrepreneurs, and honestly I did the same thing. I had a service company, and then I went into product, and somehow thought I knew product. That was a lot of hard lessons. A lot of hard lessons. We had done a little bit of product, not to the scale that I needed to truly understand what we need to do and how to approach it. Right. Man, it's easy to think I've got some success over here. Then it's like, hey, I just ran the 400 in record time. I bet you I'm really good at softball. Like it, there's kind of no relation, but that's how entrepreneurs always seem to think, right?
Well, that's what happened. I know a guy, he lost $1.2 million in 2 years. Had a successful construction company. He and his wife loved this little bed and breakfast. They'd been going there for like 10 years. It came up for sale during one of their trips, and they bought it from the owner and tried to run a bed and breakfast, actually 2 hours away from their construction company city, right, where they actually do their work. So now they're trying to operate 2 hours away in an industry neither one of them had experience in, the husband or the wife. They lost money. Finally, they had lost so much money, they were having the construction company just keep the bed and breakfast afloat until they could sell it. That whole transaction was a $1.2 million lesson in not getting outside your lane. Yeah.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean you can't like there may be opportunities to diversify or to expand a little bit but it's like you said, it's in your lane. You understand it. It's just an expansion. Not, it's like opening up the second bar, or it's maybe a little bit different, a different like approach. Like the atmosphere is different. Maybe it's more upscale or whatever, but the fundamentals remain the same. That's different from, like I own a restaurant. Now I'm going to open up a hot tub shop. Like it's just, that's just doesn't quite do it. Right.
You know how sometimes your grandparents have the best saying for it? My grandma
it's just opening up a fiddle hopper. I had to beat you to it.
I wasn't even going to say that one, but that was good. You got it in. So if you're confused on why we're laughing, it's because he snuck in the secret word for diddle hopper. So
every episode we try to sneak it in.
But no, she had a saying, and she would tell me this when I was a little kid. She'd go, "Hey, you need to stick to your knitting over there." And really what she was telling me was mind my own business. You need to mind your own business, you nosy little, snot. But I'm going to say the same thing to business owners, hey, stick to your knitting. If you're good at quilting this, don't try to get in somebody else's knitting. We
need a t-shirt that stick to your knitting. We got to we need a t-shirt on that. That's a beaut. I love it. okay. I'm gonna actually double down a little bit on someone that's executed this really well, sticking in your lane, but it's just a little bit different approach. That one of the breweries that we go to quite often in town in Edmonton here is called Sea Change. They got a couple locations. Really just a great little brewery, excellent beer. And we just got an invite the other day, a little going away party. We went over to a place called Shitties, but it's Shiddys. So it's Shitties. And what they do is it's a distillery. So they do, I think, probably sort of a vodka, but they made sort of these vodka style drinks. But what they did is they started at Sea Change. All of a sudden, at some point, you could buy these Shitties little, I don't know what they're, vodka sodas kind of thing, right? And just a fun little thing. But they obviously did quite well with that. And then I didn't even know this was happening, but they said just in this little brewery district right across the street and right next to another couple breweries right on the block and a couple blocks away from 2 or 3 other breweries, they opened up this really big location where they had the distillery and they have a patio, and you go inside, and here's a couple things that I thought was really brilliant. They had the style down to like 1980. It was like really modern, but also just like the wood paneling, the old Gunsmoke TV shows on the screen. The signage and everything was from like the kind of like the 50s kind of style, a little bit 70s kind of style. And you can get like a burger for $10, fries for $5. I'm like, that is amazing. But here's the interesting part. The burgers were from a micro business, like a business inside their business. So they weren't trying to be a restaurant and a distillery. They stuck to their drinks. They stuck to their brew house that they're really good at, but they have a business inside their business that knows what they're doing. And I've seen a lot of that lately, especially in breweries where it's not them. It's actually a little food business. They're not trying to do 2 things at once. And I find it really, really smart.
You know, so I had 3 bar restaurants. The first 2, we ran both the bar and the kitchen. In the third one, I was approached by a Russian, just could cook Russian food. I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. There's nothing like that around there. So I leased the kitchen to this person. It was like a small business inside my business that you could buy food through.
I think you were way ahead of your time because that seems commonplace now. I don't think it was 10, 15 years ago. I think you were well ahead of your time, and it was a really smart, like you said, staying in your lane, knowing what you're good at, and letting someone else that's really elite stay in their lane. That's a really good model.
Yeah, I don't think people care now, but then I got a lot of complaints about why do I got to have 2 tabs? Right.
I will say that I've been to a number of these. It's all integrated now. So like Annex, or not Annex, Ale Architect in Edmonton has its own little separate micro pizza business in there that is a separate pizza business, all runs through in the same tab. Shitties, when we bought food and drink, all ran through in the same tab. So it's not that hard to separate. So like with systems that we have today, so they've done a good job of making it seamless, right?
Yeah. So I guess it'd be almost 15 years ago now when we were doing this. I was given the advice by a CPA and an attorney not to integrate it with anything. Don't give them anything close because then they could be considered an employee, and then I'd be taxed on their sales, and I'd be taxed on, have to be treated like an employee, not a contractor. So to me, it was a separate contract as a lease for the equipment that they could sell or the space and the equipment to do that. So that's the reason why we did it that way, is to create absolute arm's length separation between the 2 companies.
Yeah. And that's, I will say that's a problem with internal back end processes versus customer experience. And like you said,
good point.
It's confusing, and it starts to, that affects it affects your bottom dollar. So an accountant and a lawyer might say, this is the way you have to do it. But you also have to listen to the market and say, yeah, but does it affect our sales? Does it confuse people? Like you said, it confused mine never buys. a frustrated, angry mind, so there's that sort of side to it. But it does feel to me like it's so commonplace now. Even we see it in hotels, we see it in breweries, we see it in, like all over the place, that I suspect that it's a pretty, the system can distinguish those things that yours never probably could.
It probably could now. We could have had a separate POS. No, I guess you didn't need the same. I mean, we already had that, but I mean, we could have had something that combined it or separate a sales report, just a sales report that separated it out.
It's
Right.
it's honestly, it's digital, and it's like food goes over here into this account and booze over here into this account. From a technical perspective, it's actually fairly straightforward. But if it wasn't there 10, 15 years ago, like you said, you could actually sort of be like on the hook a little bit. I suspect there's just systems today that are going, it's just triage, just like this goes over here, that goes over there. They're walled off and separate, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a way they've solved that for that already. Back then, we didn't know how to solve it outside of everything gets one credit card put into my bank account, then who pays the fees,
Yep.
where does the tip go? Do we have to, it was just too complicated. It was easier just to have two systems.
Yeah. And I will say that is where innovation at that point came from, because someone saw that as a problem and went, this is a problem, and I'm seeing enough of that. And maybe you were quite early. You were probably an innovator. Like you were way ahead of the game on that one. But I bet you within 5 years, if you started to become a real problem and someone went, I see that problem and I'm going to build a system for it. And all my POS system does is it just goes to 2 different QBO accounts. Like it just split, divide and conquer, right? Like, so I suspect that's probably how it came about.
Yeah. So I got 2 phases left, and we're coming up on that 50-minute mark or whatever. But the maturity phase, I think we get it, right? You're a mature company, you got kind of things going. Decline is what's interesting to me. Decline is what I call founder-itis. It's like there's a certain point in time when you're like, going, man, I've been doing the same job for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. I go to the same place, and you just kind of get bored with it. The innovation has stopped, and you become just a business that just kind of repeats itself. Not saying that's bad, but I've seen owners that take their foot off the gas. They go, some of the things that they used to drive, they now just kind of coast. So what happens in those type of businesses, and why decline happens, is that when the owner takes his foot off the gas, so does his employees, right? They do too. They're like going, hey, if you're not going to require me to do some of the things we used to do to get to this point, then I'm just going to follow your lead. And that's when it takes hard work to get it back. So that's just, if you take your foot, that's the most common form of decline. Other forms of decline are, I missed something. I missed the shift in the market. Like Toys R Us missed the consumer behavior of shopping online. They just didn't have that presence like Walmart and Amazon did. Kodak missed it with the digital camera. You might miss it, and decline is worse.
Yeah. I gotta, like, I'll say, did they miss it, or were they arrogant enough to ignore it? Because I think there's 2 problems there. You might miss it, but there's no more of an excuse for missing it because you're not paying attention to your market. But I also think there's a big dose of, we've been doing this forever and we know better than them. And, it just reminds me of is it Steve Ballmer from, Microsoft standing, on stage and saying, no one will ever spend $1,000 on a phone. And no, that sure, turned out to be completely wrong. It's, and we've seen that sort of over and over again. I'm going to circle it all the way back to the craft brewery area, because of course we're always, we've featured probably 100. No, there's 2 different breweries. A lot of the times we've probably featured in 144 episodes over 200 different craft breweries.
Oh, easy.
You know which ones I haven't featured? I haven't featured some of the old guard established ones that I've seen around. And I feel a little bad because there's some that are around here in Alberta, probably down in Scottsdale area too, that are a bit of the old guard. They were the first ones that sort of broke through and were the first sort of craft breweries, kind of. And it was kind of like, okay, well, now we're moving from Labatt's and Canadian lagers to, oh my God, what is this weird dark beer that was a craft beer, right? And some of them have been very guilty of just sitting on their hands, and no one even talks about them anymore because, and they may still have some sales, but they've just settled in and they're seen as craft brewing, but their beer is not very good. And boy, they have the dollars. They can afford to get the best brewer in the country, and they don't. And it's like, you're going to pay for that.
No, I think what happened to some of those is they got absorbed, because remember there was right in about mid 2000s, Budweiser, InBev, Miller, all these guys says, oh my God, we got to get into craft brewing. And they weren't smart enough to do a craft brew themselves. So they went out to these hot craft brewers and bought their brands. Right. And then as soon as they did that, guys that actually like craft brewer went, oh, Budweiser owns it. And stop paying attention to them, right?
Yeah,
that's just what
I've
happened.
totally done that. I've totally done that.
I used to
I'll admit it. Yeah,
Goose Island had a 312, right? And I loved it. Don't drink it. I haven't drank it since Budweiser bought it.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I'm the same way because I like to support small craft breweries, but I will say there's some in Alberta here that they weren't bought up. They were some of the originators in the province, and they're playing catch up right now. And but it comes down to, it's almost like the chef. If you could have kind of a like they always say, the hole in the wall with really great food. You could have a hole in the wall, and if you spend the money on getting a great chef, you could really excel. Now, if you have a great chef and a great atmosphere and everything else, you're going to kill it. And I think what happened with some of these breweries, they got a little bit stale, a little bit comfortable, and they fell behind in the quality of their beer. I'm going to do something. I'm sure this might not play that well. So any of you beer nerds out there, this might be sacrilege, but I was at Russian River a couple months ago. And Russian River is one of the ones that is like a mainstay. Their Pliny is what at one point was the best IPA in the country. In fact, I think it may have been voted the best beer in the country in the US for a year or two. And we were there and I had a few of their beers, and then I'm like, oh, I'll have a Pliny, I haven't had one in a little while. And they're falling behind. And I was at a little bar in Encinitas, California, and I asked the waitress. I said, "Who should I try?" And I'd have to look it up because I can't remember the name of the brewery, but it was another California brewery, a little brewery. And I just ordered a beer off their menu from this little brewery that was another place in California. And I will tell you, it ate Pliny for lunch. It was such a good beer. And I'm like, it will flip. Pliny can't go for, like, Russian River can't go forever on their reputation. And it's amazing how quick you settle in.
Yeah, but you could look at it a couple different ways. Did your taste buds evolve, right? Because you've had different beers, more beers. When Russian River and Pliny came out, it was at the front edge of the craft brewery evolution. So that was good then. Maybe they didn't change the recipe. Maybe it's still the same, but you've had you've had 100 more since. They go, oh,
yeah,
it's the new stuff is better than the old stuff. It could be that.
Exactly. Except that when I went to Russian River, I didn't order a Pliny. I ordered all of the new stuff they had. Oh. Like, I want to try this. I want to try the stuff I've never tried before. And I went, I'm not really all that excited about it. And then I had a Pliny, and I'm like, it's actually probably the best that they have here, but it's fallen behind. I don't know how that's happened. But there were beers we had going up through California. I'll be honest with you. I had a beer in Alberta last year, and it was a collab. It was a collaboration between two Alberta breweries, Snake Lake and the Growlery. And I'll be honest with you, if you say that to people in Alberta, they're like, what? It was a triple IPA collaboration from Snake Lake. And you know, like, and the Growlery, and you know how many beers I try between the US and Canada every year. And that was still the best beer I've probably had in the last 12 months. And it was a short-term collab that was probably on tap and you'll never see it again. And it kicked the living shit out of most of the beer that I've tried over the last 12 months. And it was just a couple local breweries that they got together and did this triple. That's the issue with sitting on your hands with this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But does the public recognize that? How long does it take for them to catch up and go, you guys are falling behind, right?
Yeah. Hey, speaking of falling behind, I think this episode's falling behind. No, meaning we started off, we had our growth phase right through the middle. Then we matured out and had a great conversation. Now we're in decline. So, meaning,
yeah. And I will say that was the smooth way of explaining it. But what happened was we kind of started and then the audio wasn't right. We stopped and we started again. We actually did a pivot 10 minutes into the, yeah, that shows you how complicated this is too.
You're going to appreciate that though. I'm glad I made a stop because that would have bothered me if I'd have had the terrible microphone the whole time. So
I will pick it up for our next episode. I will pick it up sooner. That was producer Blaine dropping the ball there. So.
Yeah. Okay, so, hey, you've listened to episode 144. We talked all about life stages and driving your way through it. How do you drive business growth through each business life stage? If you want to know more about us, you want to help us out, you want to be a beer sponsor, go to mikeandblaine.com where you can buy our merch. You can, buy us a beer, right? It's only $5. Best $5 you'll ever have. Best commercial you'll get for $5. Bar none. There's no other place that'll give you a better commercial for $5. So what else can we do?
Extreme value before we start to price it up, which we won't. We love our sponsors, so we're not going to price it up. But it's pretty awesome to have like 5 beer sponsors. Make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribing, make sure you're liking. But I'm going to have another ask this week. Make sure you tell your friends, especially your entrepreneur friends, especially your friends that run a business. Tell them about Biz Beer and BS with Mike and Blaine so that they can listen and have a little fun and sometimes relate to some of the challenges. Make sure you tell everyone about us. We really appreciate it. It helps us so much.
Another one of the books. We'll see you next time.
Check out their website at mikeandblaine.com. Then subscribe to the podcast and buy these guys a beer.